kitchen. Not really, but if there was, my robot chef would need a way to use properties to tell one ingredient from another. How can you learn about the properties of materials by making observations or your senses and doing investigations? Today I have 2 different ingredients for you, and we are going to take a look at some different properties of these things.
My 2 materials are flour and salt. Now I have a couple of different things around the table to use to test these properties. One of my items is a cup of water. What property do you think I will test using a cup of water? That's right, solubility. After I test solubility, I'm going to use this hand lens. When I use the hand lens, I can look very closely at objects. It's a little magnifying glass. So what do you think I'll be looking at with my hand lens? That's right, the texture of my material.
So can you remember what my 2 materials are? One is flour, and the other is salt. Great scientists always record what they're doing in their experiments. Can you remember what the first property was that I wanted to test? Solubility. Can you remember the second thing that I wanted to test? The texture. Now let's look closer and make some observations.
First, let's test solubility. Remember, solubility is how something dissolves in another substance. I'm using water today. So let's see what happens when we mix the flour in water. Usually I would measure this out. I don't have a tablespoon right now. So here's a teaspoon. We'll put a little more in there. When I mix it up, ooh, it's turned my water a milky color. Let's see if salt does the same thing. Make a prediction. Will salt turn the water a milky color? Let's find out. All right. So my salt is in there and I'm stirring it up. My salt didn't change the water color, but I can still see some little grains at the bottom. That's because I had more salt than water. But there's definitely salt that has completely dissolved in the water. That means that salt is soluble.
It's time to record. I just tested solubility of flour in water. So, what did we notice about flour? Flour turned the water a milky color. Okay? And what about the salt? When I put the salt in the water stayed clear. And there were some grains at the bottom. job recording. So now let's move on to texture.
I'm going to start with flour. So when I look closely at flour, I notice that it's powdery, almost like snow. When I take a look at the salt, what do you notice? Is it the same or different from flour? It is different. There's lots of small pieces of salt.
Time to record. So when we looked at the texture of flour, we said it looked soft and powdery. When we looked at the texture of the salt, we said it looked like grain. Now it's your turn. Answer the question on the following slide.